I am excited to welcome you to this video consultation about 4 steps to revitalize your church. A consultation for your church where I'm going to be with you for the next 15 modules. I really hope you don't get tired of me. I really hope that you enjoy these times together. But above all, I am praying that it will benefit your church and as a result, the kingdom. My name is Tom Rayner and I'm the author of I Am a Church Member, an Autopsy of a Deceased Church. Our whole plan is to talk to you, to go with you, to walk through the process, to be your on-site consultant for the next several weeks. Now, what is really kind of cool about this in many, many ways is, first of all, you're not listening to me. Yeah, I am the talking head, the talking body, and I'm the person that is on the video right now, but you're really not just listening or watching me. You're getting the input from literally thousands of leaders across thousands of churches. As a matter of fact, when it's all said and done, nearly 100,000 churches have been researched, and we have spoken to the leaders in these churches, so it is a very massive project to bring this to you. But our desire is not to bring data. Our desire is not to bring statistics, although we think that that will help. Our desire is to bring to you a consultation, 4 steps to revitalize your church. And we're going to talk about those. We'll call them buckets sometimes or categories at other times. But 4 steps, 4 major areas, 4 major issues toward revitalizing your church. And not only will we talk about it from a theoretical point of view and from a research point of view, we will talk about it as well from a practical point of view. Now, let me just share with you a little bit about my background. I was a banker. I was a 5th generation banker, and I sensed God's call to me to go to vocational ministry. And when I went into vocational ministry, I went to seminary, was there for several years, and then I began to serve as pastor of a church. First church I served was a church in southern Indiana, a church that only had 7 people when I first started there as pastor. God bless, the little church grew to above 70, and we began to see revitalization there. Next, while I was in seminary, I went to a church in Jeffersontown, Kentucky, which is a suburb, a bedroom community of Louisville, Kentucky. And again, there was the transition issue of what used to be a rural area now transitioning to a bedroom area. And we had those issues in front of us. But again, God allowed that transition to take place and a revitalization of that church. And then I went to St. Petersburg, Florida. Like we are often wont to say, somebody's got to go to Florida, so I did it. And this was a church that was very close to the Gulf of Mexico, right near the Boca Ciega Bay. A church that is right near the beautiful waters. It's a beautiful location, but it's a church that had been in decline, a church that was not reaching its community. Again, God was able to bless, and we saw a revitalization take place. The church that was my final stop in full-time pastoral ministry was a church right in the heart of the suburbs of Birmingham, Alabama. Again, a church that was fairly healthy at the onset from when I arrived, but then still needed some revitalization. And again, I thank God for the blessings that He gave at that church. From there, I just was shocked to find myself as dean of a seminary. And so I served as the dean at Southern Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky for 12 years. And then for the past 9 to 10 years, I've been president and CEO of Lifeway. I am not telling you that necessarily to just give you my bio. I'm telling you that just because I want you to hear the common thread in all of it. The local church. Went to seminary to study, to serve the local church. Served as a pastor of 4 churches, the local church. Became dean of a seminary. Why? Training others who would then go lead the church. President of Lifeway. Why? A large Christian resource company. To resource what or whom? The local church. That has been the plan, that has been the pattern that God has given me throughout my life. And that is why I have this passion for the local church. And I got to tell you, I'm very grateful. I hope you met him on the previous introductory videos. Tim Songster, who is President CEO of Costco and also President of Revitalized Churches. He's the one he and his organizations have allowed this opportunity to take place where we can deliver this information to you. Now, I'm going to ask some things of you because this is going to be incredibly important for you to hear. I'm going to ask these things of you so that you will get the most out of this consultation, that you'll get the most out of our time together. And here's what I want to share with you. Let's begin everything that we do in prayer. Would you commit to that? Would you commit that before we even take steps from this point forward, that you will pray about this consultation, this series of videos, that you will pray about how God can work through your church, that you will pray that you'll have an open heart. So let me begin right now and just let us have this time of prayer. Lord, I pray for all of these churches represented by these men and women who are watching this video or perhaps hearing it by audio. And even though I cannot know the specificity of every person who's on the other side listening or watching, you do. You know their needs, you know their hurts, their hopes, their dreams, their struggles. You know it all, Lord, and I am just praying right now that you will take this video, that you will take this consultation in a way to truly revitalize your churches. In Jesus' name, amen. So let me share some tips for the consultation. Let me just begin by suggesting to you how you can make the most of my time with you. The first thing is what we have just done. Pray. Pray before you go into every video. Here's the good news. You're going to have this video as long as you want it. You can download it, you can rewatch it, you can listen to it on audio. So just pray that God will allow you to see some incredible things through this as He is working through you and your church. Another thing is get ready for some practical information. I am not suggesting that this is atheological or that it does not have biblical foundations. I am not suggesting that this is not based upon sound doctrine, but I am saying that really what we're talking about is the practical implementation of all of the following. So hear this well, that it is going to be practical. It's going to be something that you can use almost immediately from every video, from every module to the next. It'll be something that you can use. Another suggestion is take it slowly and review it. There will be a lot of information. Now here's the good news. It will be simplified in the sense, or clarified in the sense, that there will be 4 distinct buckets of information, and this is how we talk about revitalizing churches. Those 4 steps, those 4 buckets that we'll be getting to. But take it slowly. Perhaps you were listening to it and you're tired as you're listening or watching a particular video and you don't remember everything. Pause it, turn it off, watch it the next day. Listen to the audio, download it on your smartphone, take it with you to work, not at work of course, but take it with you while you're going to work. Listen to it again. Just don't worry about the deluge of information that you may perceive is coming, because we're going to categorize it for you. We're going to make it very simple to understand. Not simplistic, but simple to understand. And then after every series of videos that we deliver to you, there will be some PDF downloads. These downloads will be places where you can take notes. There will be outlines of what I've said. There'll be information that will be supplemental to what I've said. Make sure that you get that information, you download it, perhaps you print it out if you desire to do that, and you use that information as well. So don't neglect the additional resources that we are providing you. And let me just say parenthetically, and I'll say more about this later, you're also going to get bonuses that we will have an audio conference that we will talk about questions and we'll listen to you in this webcast. So at the end of all of this, start jotting down your questions right now or comments that you want to make. I'll be ready to answer those at the end of all the series of videos. In addition to that, we'll be talking about a bonus that will be delivered to you on how to reach the millennial generation and a bonus on how to start new members classes. All that is coming, and I don't want it to be overwhelming to you. Just take one step at a time. Next, get other church leaders to join you. Other staff members, or perhaps the pastor if you're not the pastor, or perhaps lay leaders that you need to share this information. And get these leaders on board, and maybe you even take a projector and make it into something where they can all see it at the same time, and y'all go through this together. Bring as many people into this as you desire within your local church. We have set these up where they can be purchased by individuals or they can be purchased by a church. And so any type of setting where people from your church are there, feel free to do that. These are your videos. You can download them, you can keep them, and you can use them again and again. But don't do this by yourself, especially if you think that it is meaningful to help in the revitalization of your church. when you get those PDF downloads, or even if you're just listening or watching, take notes. There may be a question to something I say. There's a good possibility that I'm not saying it perfectly or eloquently. In fact, there's a good probability that I will say some things and you'll say, "No, what did Tom mean by that? What was he trying to say?" Go on and take the note there instead of waiting till later, because if you are like me, you will forget and you won't know the question and you won't know the issue. And you say, "Oh, I wanted to ask him something," but you failed to put it down. So take notes and get ready to answer questions, because as I said, there's going to be a webcast at the end of all of these where I'm going to take questions via email, I'm going to take questions via telephone, and we're going to do our best to answer all the questions that are there as we categorize the questions, and then we'll say, okay, 4 of you asked this, 5 of you asked this, and we're going to respond, and you get ready with your questions, which brings up the next point to make this as helpful as possible. Join the live Q&A. Join the live webcast. Again, you don't have to worry about that until you've gone through all these videos, until the time is over. We'll have a specific date. We'll get that date to you. But join the webcast, not just because of your question, because here's what's going to be really fun. The questions that will be asked will help you even more in the revitalization of your church, because you'll hear from men and women all over the United States, perhaps even all over the world, and they will be asking questions and you'll be saying, "I wish I had asked that question," or "Yeah, that's really what I need to know." And as you listen to my response on it, then you will be even getting more information. So get ready for the date of the Q&A. If there's any chance that you miss the Q&A, we'll send it as a download, but you won't be there live to answer, to ask the question. So if at all possible, be there for the live Q&A, and we'll get you that information as we progress through this video. Now, here is something else. It is not unusual for a person to go to this type of instructional methodology, particularly this consultation, and they get to a certain point and they get busy and they don't go through the whole thing. While I cannot for one moment make you go through every video, let me just say, if you miss any one part, you're missing something significant. Again, not because it's coming from me, but because we have put all of this information together with a purpose. We've put in a certain sequence. Everything that you're hearing and watching, all this material is something that is part of the entire puzzle, and we're giving you piece by piece and metaphorically building this puzzle together. So stick with it. And here's what I suggest. Put on your calendar that I'm going to watch the video consultation on this date for this long, and give yourself double time so that you can go back and review it. Or perhaps you can take notes, or you can get your PDF and you can take notes there. Put it on your calendar. Make certain that you have allocated that time each week. I cannot tell you how important that will be. Put it on your calendar to do so. Now, some of you may remember this television show is going to show my age. I know they made a movie about it many years later. It's called Lost in Space. And I remember the robot. I thought the robot was the coolest guy, whatever. And the robot would swing his arms like this, and he would say, "Warning, warning, warning." Well, maybe I look like a robot, but I'm not really a robot, but I'm about to give a warning. Revitalization is a process. Revitalization is not something that you just punch this button or say, "I've got 4 categories, and so I'm going to fix this, fix this, fix this, and fix this, and then everything's okay." It is a process. It takes time. How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. How do you lead in the revitalization of a church? 1 bite at a time. Or to change the metaphor, perhaps to mix the metaphor, revitalizing a church is oftentimes 3 steps forward and 2 steps backwards. And we get discouraged and frustrated in the 2 steps backwards, so we don't continue to take the 3 steps forward. And so stick with it and understand this. This is not something that is a quick fix for the short term. This is something for the long haul. And so stick with it and understand that it is a process. And I'm convinced as you listen to this material from other leaders and other churches that we are presenting to you, that you will understand so much more about how your church can go to the next level, or if it's in a decline, to turn around, or perhaps even if you think it's near death itself, perhaps to see it come alive again. Remember the word revitalization. It really comes from two root words. One is live and other is again. Revitalization means to live again. And so we're sharing with you some ways that your church, your congregation could live again. Now, having said that, there's so many examples that I could give you of churches that have been revitalized. We did a survey on my blog site, tomrainer.com, and we asked leaders of churches who've been in revitalized churches to tell us their story. I want to tell you what a blessing that was and still is. I've gone through all of the responses, and my team has gone through the responses. And one pastor was kind enough to not only tell us the story, but to send us a video of his story. So I'm going to share with you right now in the midst of this video another story about a revitalized church. Now look at this, watch this, hear this story, and God will warm your heart toward your own story as well. Here it is.
In 1962, a small group of followers out of Allen Memorial Baptist Church with a passion to reach young families decided to do a mission outreach over on South Division. Their dream was to reach young families with lots of kids, and in the beginning, God did an incredible work through these families. Initially, they saw God began to grow the church on South Division. Young families were coming. The church was booming with young kids. They ended up buying a second house and quickly outgrew that as well. Finally, in the early 70s, they made a decision that in order to see God continue the dream of what was happening with young families and the growth, that they wanted to stretch out, spread their wings, buy some land, and build a brand new building. So in early 1970s, that's exactly what they did. They got some land and they held a campaign. They went out, they built a building, but just before the church celebrated the grand opening of that building, the pastor resigned. And as you could imagine, it had an impact on the momentum and the growth of that church. In 1983, the church called its sixth pastor, and over the next 14 years, the growth of the church stagnated, and the focus of the church began to turn inward. The emphasis changed from reaching the new to just keeping the few. And as happens in any church that turns inward, they found themselves embroiled in a conflict. In 1997, the church leadership had a serious division. Sides were drawn and the leaders took with them most of the people, and the church was left mortally wounded. In those dark years, the church wondered if Satan in fact had won. Would the church ever see new life? Should the church close its doors and just give up? Should they simply decide to just move on? It was during that period of time a very small core group of believers, about 12, began to meet together and pray and seek God's face in a way that they had never done before. They asked God whether God had hope and whether He had a dream. Was there a next chapter in the history of this little church hidden in the woods? That group began to believe that God in fact did have a next chapter. And in 1999, our paths crossed as I was graduating from seminary. The church contacted me to come and be a bivocational pastor, working another job and investing all of the money they would have spent on paying a pastor. We decided to turn that same money into money for reaching new families. We had no idea how to do that. But that day we made a commitment to God and to one another that we are going to do whatever it takes to reach people for Jesus Christ. Well, over the next several years, God began to grow the church, and as we focused on reaching people, we also began to see changes in the church, and it wasn't long before we had quickly outgrown that small parcel of land on the church hidden away in the woods. Well, the church unanimously decided that we wanted to see God keep doing what God had been doing. So we sold the old building, we sold the land, and we took the show on the road, literally. We didn't have enough money to buy a big new facility or build, so we decided to go into a lease space inside the Kmart shopping center. And we built a brand new facility where we believed that God could do the impossible. And that's what happened over the next 2 years. The church tripled in a period of just 3 years. We saw God do incredible things as hundreds of people gave their life to Christ and followed Him in believer's baptism, and we knew the dream had become a reality. Well, knowing that we didn't want to stay in a leased space forever, we began to ponder the possibility of whether we should maybe ourselves try to buy the shopping center. As a church family, we made a decision we were going to go for it. And in 2006, we bought the entire shopping center, 50 acres and all of the buildings. Our passion was to see God keep doing what God had been doing. We're crazy enough to believe that the God who resurrected this church can do it again and will do it again in the generations ahead. And so my invitation to you is to come and be a part of what God is doing through this church. God bless you.
Wasn't that an incredible video? Wasn't that an incredible story about a church in Maryland that had lost all hope, and yet a few believed that God could do it? Now, understand that that's a story about a church that was near death's door itself. It wasn't just a small turnaround, it was an incredible turnaround. And what that should tell you is, if you watch that video, is that God worked there so He can work at my church. God did a great work there, He can do a great work with me. So I hope as you watch that video and you saw the story that you learned that God can do that in your church as well. So let's review what we have learned, because we've already delivered in this sequence 3 different modules to you. So you'll be able to jump right to module 2, and you don't even have to wait for the next delivery. We got 3 to you right there. Let's go on and go through some of the things that we have learned, okay? We'll always try to do this review, but I'll do it quickly. First of all, some tips for success from this consultation. Remember to pray. Remember always to pray. Every time you come to it, pray that God will use it in a certain way that you can hear from Him through it. Get ready for practical information as well. Take it slowly. Review it. Watch it again. Listen to it again. Don't be overwhelmed by all the information that is coming through. Look at the attached PDF downloads. Download them yourself. If you want to, print them out. Use that information as supplemental information. It not only will give the outline of what I'm saying, but it will give you supplemental information from time to time as well. Remember to bring other leaders in to join you, because this information is either for you or people in your church. And take advantage of the fact that you have this consultation. And again, I just want to remind you of this. 80, 85, maybe 90% of what I do in a live consultation, an on-site consultation, is packed into this time together. Now there's 10, 15, maybe 20% of the consultation that is contextual, that applies to the specific church. But so much of it is what I'm talking to you about through these videos. So bring other church leaders to join you so that they can be a part of this consultation themselves. Remember to take notes of any questions you may have. Now, what I would say is there will be an opportunity at the end of all of the consultation of all the modules to ask me questions. We'll have a live webcast, and you will have that opportunity to ask via email, telephone, and other means. So get ready to take notes so that you can remember those. And also join that live Q&A. Once we give you the date, if at all possible, put it on your calendar. Yes, it will be available in its recorded state later on, but it won't be live and you won't be able to interact with it. Put this consultation on your calendar and stick with it. Make certain that you have committed to your time, and you have committed to yourself, and you have committed to God and to others, that this is something that you are going to do for the sake of the kingdom and for the health of your church. Now, I talked about those churches that where I have served. And I hate to say I have a favorite church, because there could be people watching this video from one of the other churches and they don't think I love them either. I do. I loved all of my churches. But the church in St. Petersburg had a very special place in my heart, because that was a church just much like the church where I first served in Indiana that only had 7 people. It had about 100 people. And again, they were wondering if they were going to survive. St. Petersburg is a beautiful place, but it's a tough place to reach people. And Pinellas County is a thin peninsula with Tampa Bay on one side and the Boca Ciega Bay and the Gulf of Mexico on the other. And it is a place that is largely unchurched, even when I was serving as pastor there. And it seemed like it would be impossible to revitalize this church. But God sent one man. He sent a lot of people, but this particular man's name was Van. Van became a part of our church. There's a great story behind how he came to our church. It's a miraculous story about him on a sailboat and how he ended landing in the Boca Ciega Bay. I could go on a long time with that. But he came in he became a believer in Christ, and he came in with that fire and that zeal after he became a believer. And God allowed the two of us and some others to begin to pray together, to connect together, and God just revitalized that church. I can tell you so many stories about that church, but here is the bottom line of it. It was a church, at least from a human point of view, that seemed hopeless and helpless. It was a church that seemed like all the resources were nearly gone. It was a church that didn't even know that they could afford to call a pastor because the financial resources were so low. It was a church that many of the people had given up. But God said He was ready to do a revitalization. And I was so honored to be a part of that revitalization as the little church became a larger church. Not that size is the issue in the church, but incredibly, God did a work. My prayer for you, as you go through this entire series of consultation videos, that you will experience that same miraculous hand of God, that you will see what God is doing, and you will see the opportunities of what He can do in your church. So, I want you to come back because you're ready to go if you want to. I mean, that next module is there for you. And in the next module, we're going to talk about 7 things that can stop you from leading revitalization. Before we go to those 4 buckets, those 4 main steps to revitalization, we got to talk about what might hinder you, what might stop you. I'm excited to go through this consultation. I'm excited that you are with me and that you are allowing me to be with you. Join us in the next video. Whenever you get ready, it's there for you. And let's talk about 7 things that can stop you from leading revitalization. I'll see you in the next video.